We talked last week about Mid-South Wrestling. Of course, me and Mike Mills review Mid-South Wrestling on the Mid-South Wrestling Television Review Podcast at midsouthpod.com, wherever you find your favorite shows. The week before you debut on TV, it is announced that Dennis Condrey, a newcomer, will be debuting the next week.
You mentioned this. We talked about this here recently. I had never heard that until you said it.
And then the next week is the debut of the Midnight Express on TV.
Because actually it was 2 weeks different because they taped every 2 weeks. So even though television-wise it was a week's difference, chronologically it was 2 weeks apart.
And there's a lot of interesting things happening on that episode when you debut, and it really made me wonder about what did Bill Watts already figure out he was going to do, and what was he trying to figure out? Just to take a step back, a few weeks before you debut, Dusty Rhodes is in there for a taping, and he is the guest referee for JYD versus Butch Reed, which comes after a very confusing period of time where Butch Reed loses the North American title to Magnum TA on TV. JYD is the ref. Really does an awful job as the ref, but he keeps getting knocked down. He's just rolling around, and so it's a mess. And then that match happened because Butch Reed said he was going to wrestle whoever the fans picked. The fans picked the dog. He refused to wrestle the dog. He chose TA. TA wins the title. TA then loses the title at a house show to Nikolai Volkov. He's now the North American champion. Then we're notified that Mid-South President Charlie Lay has overturned both title changes, and Butch Reed is once again the champion, causing Nikolai Volkov to file a protest at the Russian embassy. Dusty Rhodes is brought in as the special guest referee to settle this between the dog and Butch Reed. The dog wins back the North American title. Dusty is then attacked by Nikolai Volkov, and he does maybe the most passionate interview of that era that he does, crying about the Russians and what Nikolai Volkov did, and he has the fans there in the palm of his hands. He even invents a word. At one point, he just goes, "Nikolai Volkov, you're not even in my repetenda!" But it works because it's Dusty and he's crying and there's spit on his chin.
Yeah.
Now, around this period of time, what we do know is that Bill Watts knew he wasn't going to go much further with Ernie Laddis' booker. He knew he needed a change. All of a sudden, Dusty's in there. We know around this period of time, Dusty's already talking to Crockett because Starrcade's already being planned.
Right.
Dusty's already making his moves for 1984, where he would become the booker in Mid-Atlantic. Fast forward a few weeks. Watts goes to Memphis, sees some talent, works on this deal with Jerry Jarrett to get all the guys that were at that time in some ways excess guys in a territory with too many guys. Some of them who have fallen out of political favor, like Bill Dundee, because Lawler got some power back.
Right.
You guys go to this TV taping. And on the same episode, I got my notes here, on the same episode you debut, Ted DiBiase sends in a promo from Georgia announcing he's been in Japan for the last few months and he's coming back for Jim Duggan. Ted DiBiase does not come back. He does not come back until, the fall of 84.
Yeah.
But obviously something was in motion there. They were thinking they were going to bring DiBiase back. Also, and this is where I wonder, when did he know Bill Dundee was going to be his booker? And when did he make the change here? On the episode where you debut, there's a promo. Reeser Bowden interviews Mr. Wrestling 2, Magnum TA, and Lanny Poffo. And 2 weeks before this, we had it laid out to us that Mr. Wrestling 2 is now the coach of Magnum TA. They teamed up the week before. Here this week, this promo. In the middle of the promo, Wrestling 2, everyone's smiling, everyone's getting along. He just goes, "Now, Lanny, you don't come from a good family." And he starts running down the Poffos while Lanny's standing there. And then Lanny says, "I'm my own man. I want you to judge me based on me," or whatever he says. And then we get a tag match. And the tag match is Magnum TA and Lanny Poffo versus Doug Vines and King Carl Fergie. During this match, Bill Watts is just going into detail about the Poffo family, about Angelo Poffo and the Macho Man Randy Savage. He's talking a lot about him. The next week on TV, same thing happens. During a Lanny Poffo match, a lot of talk about the Macho Man Randy Savage. 3 weeks out, or 2 weeks after this show, the third episode, this was edited off the WWE Network, which is interesting. TA and 2 are doing a promo about the situation where TA kind of likes Lanny Poffo. They team up. Wrestling 2 doesn't really like him and is trying to steer TA away from him. And he says, we have this footage, and it's footage of Randy Savage from Lexington, Kentucky, it says in the voiceover by Jim Ross. And it's like a little highlight video of some of his crazy moments, him and a snake and him throwing confetti.
It was off of the ICW TV program. The reason he said Lexington, Kentucky is because that's where they shot their television.
That's where their headquarters were, or living room, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
But again, this is now 3 weeks in a row that Randy Savage is brought up on Mid-South TV. Now they're showing a highlight video with Jim Ross doing a voiceover, and it's tied into the whole TA and 2 angle, as it were, which is just beginning. Bill Dundee and Randy Savage at that point in time were not going to be able to work together.
No.
Every ICW guy, other than Randy Savage, had gotten back into mainstream wrestling through Mid-South Wrestling. Bob Orton, Bob Roop, Rip Rogers, George Weingroff, the Devil's Duo, now Lanny Poffo, One Man Gang even.
Ronnie Garvin was the only one that didn't.
Ronnie Garvin didn't either. That's right. He went right to Georgia for Ole.
Yeah.
Because Ole didn't care. He was going to hire whoever he wanted. Is it crazy to think that the original program was going to be TA and 2 versus Lanny Poffo and Randy Savage? And Dundee coming in as the booker? Because again, Randy Savage debuts in Memphis December 10th. So this is all in motion a few weeks before that.
Yes. But see, here's the thing. And see, here is why that some of this was stunning to me, because the first 2 TV tapings we did for Mid-South Wrestling were the day before Thanksgiving, 1983, and then 2 weeks later. We flew down, did the TVs, and came back. I didn't live there. I wasn't able to see the TVs as they aired, and it was not a situation. In that Irish McNeil Boys Club, there was a monitor in the dressing room, and Bill Watts's head was sitting in front of it, and you didn't go fucking peek over Bill Watts's fucking head to watch the show. You did your shit, right? So I didn't hear the announcements or the announcers. I didn't see the rest of the program, so I didn't know that these things were being talked about. But I can guarantee you that before I went to Louisiana to do that taping the night before Thanksgiving of 1983, they knew Bill Dundee was going to be the booker.
Was he there at the taping?
I don't believe he was at the TV that time. I'm trying to think. He was at the second one. He wasn't at the first one we made. No, he wasn't. Because he was still finishing up. He was at a top program in Memphis at the time. But I was told, the first thing I heard from Dennis Condrey was, because remember I've said that Watts, the only guy amongst the 3 of us he talked to was Dennis when he was in Memphis. I never met him. I knew he was there, and I stayed away. That was for this ridiculous handshake thing, and I wasn't going to go fucking interrupting important people. But then several days later at a spot show, Dennis Condrey came in the locker room, in the heel locker room, and he said, "Hey, come here, I need to talk to you." Took me in the bathroom. I said, "What?" He said, "Bill Watts wants to bring you and me and Bobby in, me and Bobby as a team and you as our manager. He said, we're going to be his top heel tag team, and we're going to make between $50,000 and $100,000 a year apiece." And I looked at him. I said, I'm thinking to myself, why the fuck is Dennis ribbing me? What have I done to him? And I said, "Oh, okay." I said, "What? Is this a rib, right?" "No." And Dennis could quickly make you realize when he was serious about something. He said, "No, I'm serious." He said, "Are you in for it?" I said, "Yes." "Okay." So Watts had talked to Dennis. Dennis told me, and it was a couple days afterwards because I was only working part-time at that point, and I hadn't seen him, right? And he said the plane tickets are going to be coming. And it was less than a week later. That was the week before the TV taping. So this was not like a long planned out thing. The reason why he brought us in for 2 tapings, flew us down from Tennessee and back, was to get us on TV, winning a match every week for 5 weeks, including the Christmas break. We did 4 matches, and then they did a compilation thing. And we won matches every week and did an interview every week on TV for 5 weeks before the people ever saw us in the houses, that like you're supposed to. But I remember hearing from the start, knowing that Dundee was going to be the booker. So
did Watts know about the history between Savage and Dundee? And Watts, of course, someone who liked when wrestlers would fight in front of him.
Well, no, I'm thinking that probably he didn't know.
Because it's clear, because again, the first taping you're there, those 2 episodes with no Bill Dundee, Randy Savage is talked about all over those matches. The
and
third
actually,
week,
I don't know if Dundee was there for the second one or not. I don't know if Dundee was there for the second one or whether, because actually the night before Thanksgiving, we flew back on Thanksgiving and went to Dundee's house, and he had us over, him and Bev had us over for Thanksgiving dinner because we'd just come back, and of course Bobby was his son-in-law, but that's where I fucking first met Jamie Dundee, and that Christmas I ended up putting some of his Christmas toys together, the cute little tyke. But anyway, yeah, I think Dundee was finishing up commitments in Memphis. Ernie was because Ernie was definitely there. The first TV that we went, that's the first time I'd ever met or been close to Ernie in person, and my God, it was like the land of the giants, and you could hear it across the locker room when he cracked his fingers. He'd say his fingers were the size of goddamn John Holmes's dick, and he would, like you do, pop your fingers, only it would sound like somebody breaking broomsticks. And there was Nikolai Volkov and the Butch Reed and Junkyard Dog.
Tonga, the Barbarian before he found steroids. Tonga.
That's right. Tonga was the Barb, and Crusher Darso, and me and Bobby and Dennis are looking around going, my God, these are the biggest human beings we've ever seen. But we knew, we watched the matches and we said, okay, this actually, it ain't going to be hard because they're going to give us a push. That's the most important thing. Watts has said, I'm going to push you. And he said the deal was $50,000 a year if you don't get over, and $100,000 if you set records. And we set records. But he's going to give us a push, and with not to knock any of those guys because all of them were great talents, but everybody was similar. Everybody was doing the same stuff. It was all big guys doing big guy stuff. And especially we knew the rock and roll was coming. And we said, well, fuck. Once the people see this, it's different and it's exciting, and we're taking bumps, and we're, and the promos were the same thing. It's not that those guys couldn't cut promos. It's just that everybody was a big, huge guy yelling and screaming at each other. And the fans, even if they were hot at the heels, they didn't think they could whip one of those motherfuckers. Then I come out there, and I'm dressed in a fucking white jacket and red shirt and red pants and multicolored tie with a tennis racket and talking about my mama bought me some wrestlers. And they looked at me and said, we can kill him. And we instantly had more heat than everybody else just because it was different. And plus the Mid-South fans sized how much they were mad at the heels up by whether or not they thought they could beat them up physically. And so we had the most fucking heat.
You guys were also very unique because since the Samoans left in early 82, every tag team was 2 singles guys put together as a team.
That's true.
And you guys came in as a unit. You were unique because they had already had Akbar in there for a long time, and Akbar's great in Mid-South. Gary Hart was there for a cup of coffee, and then he disappeared.
And even though I kind of got Gary Hart's gimmick, the similarities ended there in our presentation.
Yeah, I mean...
Because Gary would cut you, and people could see that.
It was so unique, just the idea that when Jim Ross, who was the ring announcer that first taping, introduces you, or that first television show, he introduces you, and you get on the mic, and you do the introduction. That itself stood out. Also, JYD had music. At various points, Carl Cox had music, different baby faces. You guys were a heel team.
When Murdoch was a babyface, they'd play the Marine Corps.
That's right.
Fucking hymn for him to come out. Yeah.
Do you remember what Carl Cox's music was?
I can't remember.
Here Comes the Judge.
That's right. And when he was a gimmick babyface.
Yeah.
And that's another thing. Babyfaces had music back then, the top babyfaces. But heels didn't usually. And that was another thing that was different. And people now today look, oh my God, he took the microphone and introduced his team. How shocking. But at that period of time, the ring announcer made the introductions and their manager, so-and-so, and that was it. No, I snatch it away. You can't properly introduce. It was Watts' idea. He said, take the microphone away. Said, I'm the only one that can properly introduce my men. And I just kept doing that, and that became a thing. And if nobody else did it till then.
It was also the first time, I mean, it's a minor thing, but from a production standpoint, I believe it's the first time during an introduction they used the side camera. Usually it was the front camera where you see everyone in the bleachers in the Irish Meal Boys Club. When you got on the mic, you were facing the side. So they showed that angle, which is more of a close-up of you.
Yeah.
So it really stood out. But again,
on that big, expensive 2-camera shoot we were doing. Hard camera and side camera on the side got the close-ups.
But to tie it back to Randy Savage, I'm pretty sure the plan was TA and 2 versus Lanny Poffo and Randy Savage, with Lanny turning heel. With Angelo Poffo, based on how much they were talking about Angelo Poffo, him there as the manager of the team.
And that may have been, and see, I guess once again, we'll never know, and even the principals that are still around at this time, I guarantee you don't remember, because it wasn't as important to them and the time as it is to us looking back, us nerds and historians. But if Watts was phasing Ernie out as Booker, and Watts was not only not shy, but not incapable of taking his own book and doing what he wanted to do and then putting somebody else in that spot to hand it off to, Dusty was in and out of Louisiana because he was over in the Superdome. He was over in that territory, and Watts would bring him in and bring Andre in. He may have been talking to Dusty, and Dusty probably wanted to go to Crockett because he'd seen the fucking potential, and Crockett had already, taken the Starrcade idea. And when Watts went to talk to Jarrett in Memphis, from a couple of different aspects of that conversation, talking to Dundee, talking to Jarrett, everybody, I've heard that at first it was like, I'm just looking for talent, whatever, want to see what's going on. And he was intending more to talk to Jarrett about just his business in general. And that's when Jarrett said, and this came from Bill Dundee too, who ought to be your booker? Well, now I'm doing Dundee's accent with Jarrett, but Jarrett said, who ought to be your booker is that little son of a bitch sitting in the corner, because he's new and he knows these guys and he's got a million finishes and he works his ass off. And even if Watts had already picked some of the talent before he picked Dundee, it didn't take too long. So possibly Watts was going to start that, and he was thinking that when Dundee finishes in the Memphis territory and after the Christmas break comes down here and starts and I do know that Dundee flew down and spent a week with Watts going over stuff sometime in December. So at that point, if Randy Savage's name came up and Dundee's the new booker, then that's where that got shut down right there.
He debuts on Memphis TV, I believe, December 10th. I always heard, Jerry Jarrett's talked about the phone call he got from Angelo and talking to Randy and realizing everything will work out. I had heard, I think, Bill Watts say that he called Jerry Jarrett and put in a word for Randy Savage. And it makes me wonder, did he have to call Randy Savage up and say, look, the deal we had for you to come in, I can't do it because you have a problem with my booker. I know you don't have too many other places to go. I'll call up Jerry Jarrett and I'll let him know that you've been honorable and you're dealing with me.
And see if we can smooth it over, because now that Dundee's gone, you can go in and do the thing with Lawler and that you've been promoting for 5 years, which they did and did huge business. And boy, they did better business with Lawler in Memphis than they probably would have in Louisiana, because they've been plugging that thing for 5 years. And I pretty much guarantee you that we did better business with 2 and TA than Randy and Lanny probably would have.
But it's interesting thinking about the alternate universe where the Midnight Express are there because that was already in motion. But Ted DiBiase returns at the beginning of 84. They already are advertising the next one from Memphis, Terry Taylor coming in. And Randy Savage and Lanny Poffo as a heel team in Mid-South. I mean, it's fascinating to think about what if. You know, everyone always. But
it would have been doomed in Mid-South, and people are saying, "Oh, now you're knocking Randy Savage." They had already put Lanny on TV as an underneath babyface. I don't care whether he turned or whatever. It wouldn't have been Randy Savage would have got over because if he came in cold and was Randy Savage, holy shit, look at that. But they'd already exposed Lanny as a underneath. As a matter of fact, Lanny's one of the guys that we beat in job matches every night for the first 2 or 3 weeks we were there to get our wins.
Well, that's one of the big switches. You know, Lanny Poffo comes in and he gets a nice little push with wins on TV, and they even do a video building up him coming in. Then all of a sudden there's this match or this promo with TA and 2 where they say they're going to put TA and him together, and Wrestling 2 just says this guy's family is a nightmare. And now it's all about Lanny denouncing his family. I think the line was, "I was drafted into the Poffos. I didn't choose to be there," or whatever he said. So, you know, you think that maybe eventually he ends up teaming with his brother and doing that, but within a few weeks of Dundee coming in, Lanny's doing jobs to the Midnight Express on TV.
Well, there you go.
Coco Ware's in there for your second taping as a job guy. What was that?
In all honesty, not only the first taping, and the reason you saw Fergie, the first TV, actually, I forgot about this. The first taping we were at, Dundee wasn't there. Lawler and Jarrett themselves were there. Now that I think about it, because Lawler worked on TV.
No, he worked on the second taping, not the first one.
Okay, the second. Okay, well then the first. Oh goddamn! Point is one of those two tapings, Jarrett and Lawler were at. I bet you that Coco was there because Lawler was there, because I bet you they drove rather than fly. I bet you Coco drove. It's not unusual when two heads of territories, promoters, were going to do business, that they would come and visit the other TVs or whatever. And a lot of times, you know, they would say, "Hey, and send down, 3 or 4 of your guys and I'll give them a payoff to do the TV taping," or whatever. It didn't mean he was going to bring Coco in. And it didn't matter whether Coco did a job on Mid-South TV or not to them in Memphis, because nobody in Memphis was seeing it. So Fergie was there. Coco came down for once, probably, like I said, the one that Lawler was at. And they just, as you recall, we talked about Mike Jackson, the guys that he would bring to Atlanta TV as job guys, some that he broke in and trained. They were on a bunch of those Mid-South TVs because instead of leaving fucking Birmingham and going to Atlanta, they'd leave Birmingham, drive over to Shreveport. And they'd all get together in the car. So that happened a lot. That didn't really mean anything.